Hello everybody and welcome to the NC podcast. My name is Natasha Collins and I am the host of NC Real Estate, which includes its members club for landlords and property investors to come and build profitable property portfolios which completely align with their goals. Guys, if you haven't yet gone to my website ncrealestate.co.uk and downloaded the master spreadsheet that pops up the minute you get on the site, it's like right in your face the minute you get there, please go and do that so that you can organize your property portfolio. Number one, it's great for you because you can manage your property portfolio from wherever you are in the world. Number two, if you've then got questions about your property portfolio, you've got all of the information right there, rather than trying to ask questions on social media or wherever you are and not actually having the facts and figures of your property portfolio, which is the only way someone would be able to help you out. So make sure you get it, you actually use it, you fill it in. I send you additional resources to go with it. Do that. ncrealestate.co.uk. Right, today I am so excited to welcome Jake Knotman onto the podcast. Jake is a property investor, developer, owner of Assets We Build, which includes its global acquisitions consultancy. And Jake is the host of the Best in Property podcast. Hi, Jake.
How you doing? I appreciate your time. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Not a problem at all. It's an interesting time in the world we live in right now, but it's doing things like this. It's great, and it's good chatting with similar people, similar minds like yourself. So no, anytime.
Thank you very much. So let's jump straight into the questions, because if people haven't found you on social media yet, you're incredibly active. So guys, ladies, gents, everybody listening, make sure that you go and find Jake Knotman on social media. I'm going to put some links below. So firstly, your bread and butter is developments. Why does this strategy work for you?
Well, developments, I mean, it's something that's fascinated me over the last, I guess, throughout my property career, really. I mean, I've always started my journey, if I take you back to why I got into property developments and I guess why I do it now is, I mean, for me, it was about passive income. And I think doing developments, it was always a case of, well, I started in sales, I started understanding how a transaction worked, the sort of really from basic stuff, all that led me to doing sort of your buy-to-let, sort of your basic refurbs, and then it led me all the way up to doing your developments, your apartments in the centre of Manchester and different parts of the UK. So the reason why I do it, I guess it's one of the, I guess I always look at the ways you can make the most money in property, and if you get it right, property development is definitely one of them. And also what I quite liked was the levels that you can, I guess, go with in property development. So you can start off with a small refurb, a flip, whatever it is, and then some of the clients and some of the, I guess, projects I aspire to do are 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 units. So, and obviously the profits are slightly different. So I think for me, it was a case of I like stuff that you can progress in, and developments is something that you can certainly, once you get it right. And of course, you've got to walk before you can run. You see a lot of developers going from a 2 down refurb to building 600 units. And yeah, it fascinates me the level of different individuals and companies that you work with. And yeah, I guess I'm a big believer in growth and progress, and I guess development allows me to do that.
Mm-hmm. So when you're estimating the cost of a development, actually, hold up. What developments have you got going on at the moment? Let's talk about that first.
For sure. So at the moment, we've got quite a lot of commercial to resi stuff. We've got a lot of, I call it HMOs and projects in this sort of outside of Manchester, which we are going to be retaining ourselves. Typically, I mean, about 18 months or 12 months ago, we did 10 apartments in the centre of Manchester, which was great. We're in the pipeline of doing 26 units in Liverpool. And then we have, just projects all around sort of Manchester and the surrounding areas. We're looking at the market at the moment. Do we want to come into the market right now with build costs being quite high, or with land values being quite high? I think the market, with everything that's going on in the world right now, I think it's, I guess, a price reduction in some land values has needed to happen. And I definitely think with, I guess, the world, the way it is at the moment, I think that should happen. And I think that's when we're ready to go back into the market. So at the moment, we're sort of finalising the projects and getting them obviously to completion, the ones that we're focusing on. And that, like I said, from 14-bed HMOs to smaller projects. But these are projects more I focus on myself and retain. And then when we're looking at appraising, we're always appraising sites, whether it's 40, 50 units, co-living schemes, which is quite an interesting concept in the UK. But yeah, it's we're trying to get, I guess, with everything that's going on, get the projects that we've got going on completed, and find the right opportunities with the not so ridiculous land prices. So yeah, that's where we're up to at the moment.
Okay, so when you're estimating cost for a development, what standards do you use? Do you estimate cost on a pound per square foot basis, or do you have an idea of price for each unit or each room? How are you doing it?
So it tends to be, I mean, it depends on the size of the project. If it's a smaller project, if we're doing like, I guess, the commercial to resi, the HMO style project where it's smaller, I guess, GDV less than 500k, that would be a case of we have bring in a contractor and they just give us a set figure. It doesn't necessarily tend to be on a price per square foot value. When we're doing a large project, for example, the ones in Manchester, the ones that we've appraised previously, that is definitely on a square foot value, price per square foot value, sorry, because, well, you've just got to make sure with build costs, you've got to make sure the figures are right, because as we all know in property, if you don't get them right, then there's a lot of money to make property development, but there's also a lot of money to lose. So I use various different tools from BCIS to, I always make sure, I'm not necessarily a construction guy. I mean, I'm a deal maker, I look at relationship build, but I always make sure that I'm bringing in the right professionals. So I'd recommend to everyone, make sure they're using the right QS firm, building surveyors, making sure, I guess, the experts know exactly what they're doing, because I always make sure, I guess, if people are going to be on board a project, they have to be part of the team. And they have to make sure that they understand the build cost and what it needs to be priced at. And I guess with land values and build costs going up and tender prices going up as well, it's a situation which a lot of developers don't get right at the moment. So definitely something which I always look at myself is BCIS, which is just, I guess, an online portal which you can obviously look at various different schemes that have been built for certain prices in areas. Speaking to surveyors, even speaking to contractors as well, what they're going to build it for, but always be careful what contractors say. Never necessarily believe it every time, because of course, the contractors can make an extra 10, 20, 30 pound a square foot. They certainly will do. Now, I guess when you've got sort of tight margins in the property development space anyway, and sometimes you've got to make sure that you not only get it from a contractor's point of view, but a QS, even architect. I mean, an architect, a good quality architect that has, I guess, done I guess feasibility studies for many larger schemes. It's getting a good opinion of what works, what doesn't work. I guess making sure that you're not overpaying for something which I guess could cost you a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at land, so you go out and find the development sites, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So we have an internal team which is sort of like looks after acquisitions. So I primarily focus on sort of the relationship building with the vendors. It can be, like I said, we don't really tend to get stock from your likes of your local agents or anything like that. And we try and get off-market stock as everyone else tries to do. But we try and get, especially on the sort of consultancy side of business, which is work with the institutions, we try and get schemes at the very early stages. And the reason for that is because, well, there's more value to be made in a deal. So I think it's allowing us to, when you buy a site with planning, for example, I guess stops you from, well, getting the most money for the scheme, because a developer that's got planning consent on a deal that has took the scheme through planning, they want to get a premium for that site. So my ideal scenario is to put the planning on ourselves. Yeah, it's just taking a financial risk, of course, but there is much more value and there's much more money to be made if you can get a site with no planning and take it through the process for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so when you're talking to vendors, what are you saying? You're saying, look, what's the lowest price that you'd sell it to us for, or what are you looking to get for it? And then from there you estimate how much it's going to cost you to build before you get the architects in, or do you have architects and quantity surveyors on a retainer who will do that for you quite quickly?
Well, it's a good question. I think I always make sure that the early stages I'll get an architect, or again, it depends on the project. If it's a commercial to resi, if it's a brand new build plot, we've obviously got to look into what's going on in the local area as well, what height we can get as well, because certain areas, for example, parts of Manchester, parts of Birmingham, there's only certain amount of storage you can get. So my goal really with the vendor is it's got to be a win-win situation. So of course, as a business, we've got to make money. The investors and the funders and the people that are all involved in the project, they've got to be happy, and the vendor has got to be happy too. So I think if I'm always honest and transparent. So like I said, I put my between cards on the table. I'll exactly show them what the sales values are in that area. I'll show them what the build cost we've got it for. I'll get that, I guess, opinions from contractors and QSs. And you know what vendors are like. They want to try and get as much as they can. But the scheme's got to work. I mean, most developers will look at a scheme and they'll near or nearabouts have the same build cost. And again, similar sales values as well if you are looking to sell it, of course. So it's just making sure that the vendor's educated, because a lot of them, for example, they'll see a scheme in Manchester. They've got maybe have an old industrial unit or whatever it is, an old commercial asset, and they'll see a 50-story tower and like, yeah, I want the most money for it. But if you've got a height restriction and that get to 5 or 6 stories, then your land which could get 50 stories on it. So, but again, it's educating and making sure that we can present options to the vendor. So I could obviously come in and just buy it on an unconditional basis. I could buy it subject to planning, but I also maybe try and look at a JV as well. So obviously if the vendor chucks the land into the deal, it means that I reduce my borrowing costs. I've de-risked it for me and the investors in the deal. So that's again what I guess we try and look at. But there is a risk again to the vendor of the site, because they've got to wait for the scheme to be completed, or they've got to wait till it gets planning. But I guess if you are dealing with a tricky vendor, see if they can chuck the land in. And we're taking all the work, we're taking the financial risk. We've got to put it through planning. We've got to speak with the planning consultants and everyone like that. And it's not an easy job, as you know. So yeah, I think education with vendors and presenting good options as well, and being honest with people. Of course, if you've got to negotiate and you've got to try and get a good deal. I'm not saying like I'm a charity, but I think it's almost, yeah, if we can get a good deal, and if it's a no from the vendor, then we'll try and present the good option so everyone's happy.
What are land values like at the moment around Manchester?
Oh, crazy, absolutely crazy. I mean, when I first started looking at sites in Manchester, I mean, we could pick up, we see it on a per plot basis. So it'd be like, say if you've got 100 units, it'd be 10 grand per plot, what it costs us to buy the scheme really. And now you can see some schemes and sites that are 40, 50, 60 grand a plot. Now straight away, if it's costing you 40 grand for that unit to buy just the land, then you've got the build cost on top. That just doesn't stack up. And this is why you see a lot of sites or a lot of developers, messing up. Because what they do is they try and they look at a great location. The vendor's obviously got to negotiate them hard. And then all of a sudden they can't achieve the sales values. And then all of a sudden you've got a scheme which can't sell. And then it just ends up in a tricky situation. So to answer your question, it's I think a lot of developers, if you speak to developers across I don't know what it's like in London at the moment, but we focus on Manchester, Birmingham. And I think because those places have had a lot of attention from the overseas market and the growth and the HS2 and where Manchester's gone, people tend to think they can charge a high value, but it's just not at that point yet. So you start to see a lot of developers now looking at alternative markets slightly outside of Manchester, places like Stockport and Salford and other areas which you can still get good value for money. But the centre of Manchester, it's just ridiculous. And don't be wrong, there is some schemes that could stack up to those values, but Manchester's not London yet. It can't demand those prices. I'm sure it'll keep on growing over the next few years, but it's just not at that point yet. So it's an interesting one with vendors and landowners for sure.
Do you think then, reading between the lines, that this is why so many developments are going up with these guaranteed rent schemes, is so that they can sell the properties at a higher price and essentially go, okay, well, you buy it at 50 grand over where market value is, we'll guarantee you the rent, but actually guaranteeing you the rent and even topping up a couple, like 150 to 200 pound per calendar month, is better for us to have your higher amount in our pocket than it is for us to just sell it at market value. Do you think that's what's happening?
For sure. And you'll see a lot of developers that will do that. And you'll also see a lot of developers that have that, but then can't guarantee the rent. You look at places like Liverpool, which is a market which I love. Liverpool as a market. I would invest there myself, but you've got a few developers, I guess, across the UK, really. I'm not stereotype making it out to be Liverpool's like this bad place, but you've had experiences like that where people will just build the guaranteed rent into the prices. I mean, you're getting these student apartments that are like £80,000, and it's like it's a small cluster. It's like, where's that come from? And yeah, you're definitely right. I think it's because it's that vicious cycle. They can't get cheaper sales. The only way they can do it is obviously squeeze the prices. Then you've got obviously contractors looking to make their profit, high build costs. So it's one big cycle. And you see so many developers now that I guess the fractional sales market for that will probably dry up quite for the next 18 months. And you'll see a lot of developers looking to work with more institutions, one transaction, one buyer, I guess, which de-risks it for the developer, but also de-risks it in some way for the fund as well, because they have a bit more control in the deal. But yeah, it's when guaranteed deals start coming into the prices, and it's just 80-90 grand for a student room is just ridiculous sometimes. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and you see a lot of schemes that just go wrong because of it. And it's like you said, you can get it built, but then you've got 300-400 investors that have been guaranteed a 10% for 5 years. and then they don't get it. Some of them don't get any rent. So yeah, it's crazy times.
Because then the developer can just declare bankruptcy and disappear. And then you've got a flat with no management, no maintenance.
There's no resale value either. Especially, I mean, don't get me wrong, resi is a bit easier to obviously for the resale market, but because you bought it at such a high price with guaranteed yield, it's crazy. And you look at student, if you're buying in Liverpool or in any of these markets and you're spending way over the odds for a student pod, you're not going to be able to sell anywhere close to that when it comes to reselling in 5 years. You've had students living in it for 5 years. It's depreciated in value, and it's just, I've had agencies from Kuwait and the Middle East, they're all around the world, that they just won't. I mean, we're talking specifically about student here, but they just won't sell like a student ever again.